There are two main theories in science about what time is. The first is that time is flowing, that it is a moving entity that we move with and that we experience, creating past, present, and future. And then the second is that time is a series of static images that our brain becomes conscious of, interprets for the purpose of survival. And that all moments in the static theory, past, present, and future, coexist in a kind of four-dimensional continuum known as the block universe. And that events don't happen, they just are. And there's a difference. Events don't move with us, but that they actually exist all around us and we experience them. And Einstein's theories also elucidate this. He implied that the four-dimensional space-time where the passage of time exists is relative and observer dependent, and that there's no special status to the now or to the future or to the past, that it's all one thing. And then there's the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which yields a static universe that's devoid of time variables and suggests that time emerges from how our brain interprets and processes the relationships between changing objects. Again, a survival evolution. And I feel very strongly that mediumship proves this static version of time, because mediums work with static images. That's how we share information. That's what we pick up on. We experience images, visuals, sounds, intuitive knowing, and other sense experiences, but they all arise out of seemingly nowhere. And they arise as static images usually, even when they're moving, because of course the idea of static time doesn't mean that it's just dot, 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 dot. It means that it's experiences that appear to be moving because it's how the brain translates it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're moving. It just means that it's how the brain is seeing it. And so in mediumship, sometimes we do see moving pictures, but that doesn't mean that they're actually moving. It's just how the brain is interpreting that static image that it's interpreting. So we pick up on these events that occurred between the sitter and the energy that we're interpreting, and that still exist and always will exist and always did exist, and we just happen to be keying into them. And spirit uses these static images because it's the only way that spirit can really communicate with us. Sometimes there are intuitive knowings that come across as a narrative, as a sentence, as a knowing and a way to share direct message, but oftentimes it's through symbol and metaphor, because it's really the main way that spirit can communicate with us. Spirit no longer exists in the body, so no longer has this brain. And so it's just a totally different way of communicating in my experience. And so it's circuitous and requires interpretation, these static images that we pick up. An example of that is an experience that I had that I'll share, that I think kind of points to the circuitous nature of spirit communication and the way that it picks up on static images in order to share information, and exists in this four-dimensional time block universe where we experience individual events as individual events when really it's just one big thing. So the importance of meditation and mediumship is even more dire now when we consider this, because it requires us to become very still, very present, to breathe and be able to pick up on these static images and share them. So my example of this is one day I was meditating, and I knew that my friend's father was transitioning from his body. I didn't know when, but I knew it was happening. And I'd never met him. I didn't know him at all. I didn't know anything about him. I didn't even know his name. I just knew that my friend's father was transitioning. And so I was meditating, not thinking about that at all. It was not on my mind. And suddenly I saw an image of a man who was sitting on what seemed like a lawn chair in the bright, bright, bright sun. And he had on sunglasses. He was probably in his 80s, maybe early 80s. And he was smiling so brightly. He had big white teeth and just seemed so happy sitting outside in the sun. And then suddenly he started to try to speak, and he was stuttering. He was going poo, 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 and he couldn't say the word, but he was speaking directly to me. And so finally he got the word out, and it was Paget. He went Paget. And I came too. I came out of the meditation and I was curious. I was like, what does this mean? I looked up the word Paget. There's such a thing as Paget's disease. There is an actor named Valerie Paget Brewster who was in the show Criminal Minds. And I'm not sure that Paget is pronounced that way, but that is the case. And then as I was researching the word Paget, I got a text from my friend, a group text that her father had passed. And she sent a picture of him to honor him and to acknowledge his life. And it was the man I saw. And what's really interesting is that his name was Valery. He was Russian and his name was Valery. Later, I verified the other details, but that doesn't really matter for these purposes. It's the fact that the way he told me his name was by bringing up the name of an actor whose name was Valery. It's that circuitous, and it requires that much focus to be able to pick up on this information. And I doubt he even watched Criminal Minds. I didn't really watch Criminal Minds. I've seen episodes though, and so his static image was able to pick up on my interpretation of a static image so that his name would come to me and I would know for certain that it was him that I saw. And I, like I said, I did tell her a couple of years later. I didn't feel that it was appropriate to share that with her in the moment, but a couple of years later I did. And it gave her the peace that we all seek to give people when we practice mediumship. But this is just an example of that circuitous communication that requires the static images of time to be able to share information with people seeking comfort. And we can all do this. We can all pick up on these static images that exist all the time, every moment, every experience, always existing, always ready to be keyed into, always ready to be reinterpreted, always ready to be comforting, always ready to be teaching. We can do this, and mediumship can teach us this. And again, mediumship once again elucidates a scientific theory.